If you are searching for a perfect fishing spot, this video is for you. This list covers locations within the city and spots a few hours away. These are the most well-known fishing spots that every seasoned angler in Las Vegas is familiar with. I personally fished at most of these locations and visited nearly all of them. Before we dive right into the list, let me explain 6 metrics I used to rank these spots. I carefully considered the distance, the fishery size, the fish diversity, the scenic beauty, the success rate for catching a fish, and the quality of the fish. Now, let's get started. For number 10, we have Cold Creek. This place is known for its horses that are quite literally everywhere. Lots of people don't know that there is a nice fishing spot here. This place is a bit secluded, located about 51 miles from the Strip, which is about a 55-minute drive, heading towards the Mount Charleston area. While it's not too far, it's definitely outside of city limits. This fishery is about 1 acre, and it's the smallest fishery on this list. This pond is primarily stocked with trout, but when I was a kid, I remember seeing a lot of goldfish here. Not just small ones, but giant goldfish. While I'm not too sure if the big ones are still around, based on this video I found, it seems like they still inhabit these waters. Overall, the diversity of species in this fishery isn't very great. Cold Creek is a remarkably beautiful area. While the pond is situated in a desert environment, there are plenty of mountains and trees nearby that add to the scenery. I've visited this area several times throughout my life, and it never fails to impress. Additionally, seeing horses roam around adds a nice charming touch to the overall experience. This pond is stocked twice a year, typically in November and March. Timing your trip around these stocking periods will significantly increase your odds of catching a trout. The quality of fish here is typical of stocked fish. If you don't mind eating stocked fish, this place is for you. Personally, I find that there are noticeable taste differences with stocked fish, but they still are fun to catch. If you are practicing catch and release, you'll have a good time. For our next spot, we're going into the city, to Lorenzi Park. Lorenzi Park is 6 miles away from the Strip, which is about 20 minutes. This pond is about 3 acres, and the species include rainbow trout, bluegill, green sunfish, catfish, and the common carp. I've been to this park and fished here on a few occasions. I would only come to this park during the day because in my experience, night, it can be a bit unsafe.
Developing news right now, Las Vegas Metro Police are investigating after a body was found floating in a lake. This was at Lorenzi Park.
I'm not saying you shouldn't come here, just be aware. This pond is stocked, so your chances are quite high if you're going during stocking periods. However, if the pond hasn't been recently stocked, catching something can be a little challenging. The pond does have some impressively sized carp, as shown in the footage, and the bluegill are kind of small here, but they still are fun to catch. Just like in Cold Creek, if you enjoy fishing for stocked fish, you might actually enjoy the spot. However, the fish quality is typical of a small pond like this. Personally, I would target carp here, as they tend to grow quite large. Here we have another pond within city limits, Boulder City Urban Pond. The distance to Boulder is about 28 miles, which is about 32 minutes. This lake is around 3 acres, which I would say is small. This seems to be a common size for ponds within city limits. This pond has rainbow trout, bluegill, catfish, and is about the same size as Lorenzi Park. Boulder Pond is in Veterans Memorial Park, and you'll find some grass fields and some trees. It's not your best park, but at least you'll have some shade while you're fishing. Boulder Pond does stock fish year-round, primarily focusing on species like rainbow trout during the cooler months and catfish during the warmer months. This means if you target those species during those months, your odds will be pretty good. Next up is Sunset Park. If you have any fishing experience in Las Vegas, then you probably know that this is one of the most well-known spots within city limits. Sunset Park is a whopping 8.5 miles from the Strip and is approximately 18 minutes. Sunset Pond is about 14 acres and it's surrounded by picnic tables and lots of trees. I would say that this fishery is more oriented for a nice family afternoon picnic. The fish that can be found here are rainbow trout, bluegill, channel catfish, common carp, and largemouth bass, which is a decent arrangement of fish. In my experience of coming to this lake, it's a nice park compared to your average park, but the water is very dirty and you probably can't see past a few inches. One thing there though is there is a lot of trees, so you can have shade while you fish. I believe many people struggle to catch fish here. When the pond is stocked with trout or catfish, you have a good chance of catching something, but if not, it can be challenging. While making this video, I saw someone catch a decent sized largemouth bass. I wouldn't have believed it if I did not see it on camera. Even more incredible, there was a massive grass carp that had lived in here for years, as you can see in the footage. Unfortunately, there were reports that the fish has now died, and the Department of Wildlife does not indicate that any more grass carp still inhabit these waters. In my experience, this pond can get pretty dirty, and when I was a kid, I often saw a lot of dead fish floating around. However, you can catch some really big common carp here, and the catfish aren't bad either. Next up, we have Cummins Lake. Cummins Lake is 253 miles away from the Strip, and it's about a 3-hour and 54-minute drive. This is a nice camping trip to go to, or a fishing trip, but it's not necessarily your after-work fishing break. Cummins Lake is about 410 acres, which is definitely bigger than our previous options. The species included here are largemouth bass, bluegill, northern pike, rainbow trout, and cutthroat trout. To my knowledge, this is the closest place to Vegas where you can catch northern pike. Although northern pike are invasive, and there are plans to eliminate the species, they are still fun to catch, and they get massive out here. For example, check out Sin City Outdoors when he caught a 25-pound pike here. This really makes me want to go out there again. Cummins Lake is also a fantastic spot for family outings. You'll find plenty of public amenities like benches and trash cans, and shaded areas perfect for picnics and family events. If you're planning on shore fishing, keep in mind that you can only access about half of the lake from the shore. And let's not forget, in the winter, this reservoir is a prime spot for ice fishing. I would say that this fishery isn't for beginners, but if you're willing to put in a little bit of work and learn the best practices, catching trout or pike can be pretty good. The fish out here are very healthy. Like in these photos, I caught a 4 and 5 pounder on the same day. Very big trout out here. Unfortunately, I never made a video about it, but I plan on coming back out soon. There is one problem though. Due to the elevated methyl mercury levels, the Nevada State Health Division has issued a health advisory that recommends no consumption of largemouth bass or northern pike from Cummins Lake. Although the fish appear healthy and they are fun to catch, consuming them could pose health risks. This video took me a lot of time, from finding clips to gathering all the information. If you've enjoyed it so far, let me know by smashing that like button and subscribe if you want more. Also, leave a comment letting me know what your favorite fishery near Las Vegas is. Alright, let's get right back into it. Looks like we're at our top 5 fisheries. Next up we have Floyd Lamb, which is another spot we have within city limits. Floyd Lamb is 22 miles away from the Strip, which is around 25 minutes. Floyd Lamb Park has a total of 4 ponds, and the largest pond being about 5 acres, called Tula Springs Pond. The species that can be found here are rainbow trout, bluegill, channel catfish, common carp, and largemouth bass. Floyd Lamb has a decent scenic view. There is a self-guided tour with some historical buildings dating back to the early 1900s, including a ranch house, a blacksmith shop, and some other things. Yet again, this is another pond in the city that is stocked frequently. If you keep track of the stocking schedule, you will have a good chance of catching something. But that's not all. There are also naturally spawning carp and largemouth bass, and I've seen several videos of people catching carp here, and I've personally seen largemouth bass caught on the top 2 ponds. At number 4, we have Lake Mojave. Lake Mojave is about 101 miles away, and it is approximately an hour and 50-minute drive. So this is one of the farther locations, but it's not crazy far. This fishery is approximately 28,000 acres, so it is quite large. This is another lake that is a part of the Colorado River system, and Lake Mead's water runs right into it. The fish species that can be found here are striped bass, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, channel catfish, threadfin shad, gizzard shad, common carp, and grass carp. Whew! Lake Mojave comes right after Willow Beach, and it's right before the Davis Dam, so they share a lot of the same species. At this lake, I would say that your average striper is a little smaller than Willow, although you still have your massive ones lurking. Unlike Willow Beach, there are sizable largemouth bass and smallmouth bass, and this is a pretty popular fishery for them. So by now you've probably figured out that Lake Mojave is located in the desert. You can find some trees, some nice coves, and some shaded areas for camping, although to access all of these, you're probably going to need a boat. Something I will mention though is that Lake Mojave is very well known for very sudden and very powerful gusts of wind. So I definitely wouldn't bring any small boats or kayaks out here because you have a good chance of getting flipped over. This is considered one of the harder fisheries. It's not quite as hard as willow, but it is considerably difficult, especially if you are a beginner. Although the catch rate may be harder at this fishery, it makes up in quality. There are some big stripers in here, and you can catch them far more frequently than willow, typically around the 4 to 7 pound range. There are still monsters out here though. The state record of a striped bass was caught in this lake, weighing 63 pounds, in 2001 by Alan S. Coe. And to put this in perspective, the world record is only 69 pounds. That's a 6-pound difference. For our number 3 spot, we have Penguin Lake. Penguin Lake is a very popular destination, and it is around 215 miles away. It is approximately 3 hours and 30 minutes, and it isn't really your after-work trip, but it's more of your vacation trip. I've made this drive on several occasions, and it's always been worth it for me. The lake is about 1,248 acres, which is a solid-sized lake. There are plenty of fishing spots, but about 1/3 of the lake is hard to fish because of weedy and muddy areas or residential housing. So we can happily fish about 2/3 of the lake. This fishery boasts an impressive diversity of trout species, including rainbow trout, tiger trout, cutthroat trout, and brook trout. So if you're looking for trout, this is not a bad spot. This lake is high in elevation, so it offers a refreshing escape from the scorching Las Vegas heat. Surrounded by lush forests and upscaled resorts, it boasts a variety of camping options and stunning natural beauty. Summer temperatures hover comfortably around the 80s and 90s, making it a perfect haven for outdoor enthusiasts. When the winter blankets the region in snow, the lake transforms into a paradise for ice fishing. I have been out here in the summer and I have been out here in the winter, and I've caught plenty of trout every time. The success rate is fairly good here. Most people walk out with trout, and I have limited out every single time I visited this lake. Your limit is 5 trout per person. In my experience, it doesn't really matter what part of the lake you are fishing, I always get good results. This lake is also popular for fly fishermen. I often see them on the lake and river, so if you're looking for a prime fly fishing destination, this is definitely worth considering. Now, the fish out here are remarkably healthy. The majority of trout are naturally born, and this indicates a thriving ecosystem with ample food sources. There are stock trout out here too though, and they can be identified with a clipped dorsal fin, but it is rare to find one. In my countless fishing trips out to this lake, I've constantly encountered big, healthy fish that have provided delicious meals. And at our number 2 spot is the notorious Willow Beach. Willow Beach is about 57 miles from the Strip, which is about a 58-minute drive. Although I can't really give you an exact acreage, because this is technically a river system, I can tell you that it is about 62 miles of river between the dam and the beginning of Lake Mojave. Willow Beach is mostly accessible through a boat or some kind of watercraft. This makes it a great place for adventuring. You have a lot of secluded areas. Here you can find striped bass, catfish, gizzard shad, threadfin shad, common carp, grass carp, and trout. Now, there are largemouth bass and smallmouth bass in this region of the river, but they are pretty small. Surprisingly, I have seen them close to the dam before, but black bass, they tend to stay closer to Lake Mojave. This is due to the very cold water that comes from the bottom of the Hoover Dam, and if you know anything about black bass, they prefer warmer water. By the time the water gets to Lake Mojave, it warms up a lot. Right by the Willow Beach Marina, there is a hatchery. Trout are stocked year-round from this hatchery, making it a good spot for trout fishing. If you are targeting trout, this is probably the best fishery near Vegas. During those holidays and special events, they release larger trout, ranging from 12 to 16 inches compared to the usual 8 to 10 inches. These trout are bigger than any other stocked trout you'll find near Vegas. However, they don't naturally survive here for very long because of the predatory striped bass that consume them within a few days. Since these striped bass feed on these trout year-round, they turn into monsters. Willow Beach is an incredibly beautiful place. There is so much exploration and scenery. This fishery I have probably been to by far the most, and I always still manage to find something new when I go there. There is so much wildlife out there, including raccoons, skunks, bighorn sheep, donkeys, ring-tailed cats, not to mention many historical sites like Emerald Cove that are only visible on the river. I will mention though, that if you do not have any kind of watercraft, you will not be able to see the vast majority of the river. If you're going for trout, this fishery isn't that hard, but a lot of people come here for stripers, and that's what makes this fishery incredibly difficult. It took me 4 trips before I caught my first striper, and I was on the river 8 hours at a time. The quality of the fish at Willow Beach is like no other in Nevada, especially when it comes to the striped bass. The striped bass at Willow Beach are known to grow larger than anywhere else in this river system. It's common for anglers to catch 20 to 30 pounders on a monthly basis and 40 pounders on an occasional basis. The reason they get so big down here is because they eat trout, and you will not find this in Lake Mead because there are no trout hatcheries to feed the striped bass. And for our number 1 spot, Lake Mead. Lake Mead is 35 miles away from the strip, and it is about a 50-minute drive. Lake Mead spans an impressive 158,000 acres, making it the largest man-made reservoir in North America and by far the biggest fishery on this list. While some visitors have mixed experiences in certain areas of the lake, it's important to remember just how vast and varied Lake Mead truly is. The sheer size of Lake Mead can be explained by its incredible biodiversity. This lake is home to a wide variety of species, including striped bass, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, catfish, tilapia, gizzard shad, threadfin shad, crappie, common carp, grass carp, green sunfish, and bluegill. Lake Mead has by far the widest biodiversity of fish species on this list. When it comes to the scenery, some areas of Lake Mead are better than others, but for the most part, it's all pretty plain, especially when you compare it to a lot of the other fisheries on this list. With the rising and falling water levels, it's hard for new vegetation to grow. Not all species are easy to catch here at Lake Mead, but striped bass are one of the most sought after species, and it's relatively easy to catch them. Whether you're using lures or bait, you have a good shot. Lake Mead has an impressive population of both largemouth and smallmouth bass. In fact, Lake Mead holds the state record for the largest largemouth bass, weighing at 12 pounds, caught by Michael Gary in 1999. While there might not be largemouth bass of that size today, it's still an excellent fishery for them. Another very popular species to catch here is crappie. Lake Mead has maintained a stable population of crappie since the late 1960s. To catch these fish, you will need a boat, as they often inhabit the Overton Arm and Echo Bay areas. These locations provide submerged vegetation and structures, like rocky outcrops, that crappie prefer. In previous years, I would have said that the quality and the health of the fish here are low, but overall, the health of this fishery has dramatically improved. There is still an overpopulation problem with striped bass in this lake, which is one of the reasons on why they're so easy to catch, but in the last few years, I would say that even this problem has improved a little bit. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more fishing adventures and tips. And don't forget to leave a comment below about your favorite fishery near Las Vegas. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're curious why I keep every single striped bass that I catch at Lake Mead, and you want to learn more about the overpopulation issue, click here. Thanks for watching, and tight lines.